Hello team, welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video with myself, Jonathan at MS Pierce. This is Ukraine War news update, second part thereof for the 19th of October 2024. I forgot to mention this at the end of my hits and losses video, which is really annoying. But we have started up an ATP Geopolitics NAFO truck for the 12th NGU, National Guards unit. And it's going really well because I haven't really announced this officially. I mean, I did on Jake Bro's live stream with Jake Bro last night, and already 8,267 euros have been raised. You can get a patch if you donate enough, and the patch has lots of meaning. I'm going to explain this. I'm going to do a live stream on this, and we might, if we do really well and exceed 19,000 for the truck. And this tells you, what you get and how it all works. And then there's a little video from the unit and the different things that you can do to make donations and what you get for that, etc., etc. If we manage to beat that, then I'm pretty sure we'll be able to add things like drones on top of that and other bits and pieces. But that's amazing so far. Thank you to the community. And I haven't even donated yet, so I'm going to be donating some to this myself. So this is really, really impressive. But we'll do a live stream on this. It's just the sod's law. This has gone live at a time that's particularly busy. This weekend is very difficult for me to commit too much time to a live. So possibly on Monday, but I've got a live booked on Monday as well now. So we'll see how it goes. May be able to squeeze one in tomorrow night. Anyway, please go and check that out. I'll put a link to that in the description to the video, and I really appreciate those who have already contributed so much. It's marvelous. Okay, so now we have the military aid video. We're going to start with big money. The executive board of the IMF, International Monetary Fund, approved the 5th revision of the EFF program. Thanks to this, Ukraine will receive a new tranche of about $1.1 billion, according to Prime Minister Denis Shmyhal. These funds will be used to cover budget expenditures of a non-military type there, so generally keeping the country afloat there. The IMF helping out there. I don't know where exactly that money comes from and what the strings attached to it might be, but that's good news. Big Financial Times scoop overnight. US is now willing to contribute up to $20 billion into a joint G7 loan for Ukraine, with officials eyeing an agreement next week. These, no doubt, are all the loans concerning monies underwritten by frozen Russian assets, and I think that's what the G7 loan is going to be. So 20 billion going towards that is great, because there's the EU version of this, then there's a G7 version, but then I don't know, I get confused. There might be some kind of crossover there. Anyway, US has been, I don't know, delaying or I'm not exactly sure what's been going on. It could be trying to work out the legality of all of this, but that's exceptionally good news if that comes to fruition. That's an awful lot of money that the Ukrainians will be receiving in these loans underwritten, paid back. So you give the loans to Ukraine, and then instead of extracting the payment for those loans from Ukraine, they don't have to pay it. You're going to take it from the profits from frozen Russian assets. So, each month you're just creaming off those assets to pay yourselves back for that loan of the money that you've given to Ukraine. That's how I understand these ones are working. Right. Denmark announces, sorry, just to rewind. So that's then something you can take back to your electorate and say, hey, we've given $20 billion to Ukraine to help Ukraine survive, but don't worry, it's not come out of the taxpayers' coffers. This is coming from frozen Russian assets, and I'm pretty sure that's going to be far more popular than you giving them money, even though, as we'll see later, the way that you give money is itself often an economic stimulus, as I've talked about many times. Right. Denmark announces $350 million as a military aid package for Ukraine. This is incredible. The Danish are at the top of the lists routinely for giving stuff to Ukraine. This is the 21st aid package since the full-scale invasion began, October the 18th. So yeah, this is yesterday. Latest aid package includes weapons from Denmark's stockpiles, funding for air defence systems with Germany, and contributions to the UK-led International Fund for Ukraine. According to the statement, part of the funds will be used to expand training programs for the Ukrainian military. Quote, the government is working on making a decision on further procurement directly from the Ukrainian defence industry, including in the area of drones, Danish Defence Minister Troels Lund Poulsen said. Now, do I have that? Yes, I do. Okay, let's bring that forward, actually, because this is super, super important. And it's exactly what we're talking about. Here it is. So, I often use Denmark as the example of you either spend money in your own defence industry and then you're stimulating your own economy and giving the products to Ukraine. That's the best way for you to help Ukraine. It depends what you need, what Ukraine need, of course, and that's another discussion. Or you invest in Ukraine and Ukraine get the stuff they want, and also that money is invested in the economy and there's a money multiplier and they can get lots of tax revenue, and that's really good for Ukraine. So that's the second best thing for Denmark. The third best thing for Denmark is investing, so, you know, because you want Ukraine to do as well as possible. Third best thing is to order stuff from the third country. So Denmark giving some money to the UK-led IFU, I think it is, will not invest often in Denmark and is not investing in Ukraine. That's like your third best thing. Now, we've heard that the EU, has recently said that they are struggling to fulfill certain pledges to Ukraine because they can't get things moving quickly enough, and so they are going to start investing in Ukraine. So that's that second option for the EU. They're not investing in the EU, they're going to invest in Ukraine. Part of the problem is investing in the EU is, one, time. Takes ages to get things built, you know, factories expanded and this and that and regulations and so on and so forth. And then it takes a long time to build these things, and it's really expensive. So labor is a lot more expensive probably in say France than it will be in Ukraine. And so if bang for your buck is important in terms of what this money is going to buy, and not talking about investment in your own countries and how that money actually might, your bang for your buck can be worked out in different ways, right? In terms of just buying shells, like if we can build them ourselves and it's going to cost us this much, or we can build them in Ukraine and it's going to cost us a fraction. So here, Dead District says, investing in Ukraine's homegrown defense industry could help the West get items that would cost the Americans $1,200 to make, but instead costs $58 in Ukraine. So there's a massive difference. That's according to Brovdi. So within 6 months, the war will become pilotless because we're using AI drones to replace human operators. So okay, going off for something else. But in terms of these drones, it appears here, they can make something for $58 that would cost $1,200 in America. So this is the idea that, okay, given that, I know we want to invest in our own countries, but it's taking a long time and it's freaking expensive. We can take that money and invest that in Ukraine. Maybe you can get some return on investment by that being kind of your facility in Ukraine or something like that. And so therefore there is some payback initiative, or motivation. It's so much cheaper. You're getting so much more. And I know Thierry was saying this to me the other day, that actually, you know, it is just that much cheaper to make things in Ukraine. Right, the Danish government has prepared the 21st military package. Yeah, sorry, that I've talked about that already. I wanted to say that it's both stuff from their own warehouses and orders from international suppliers, but actually the Kyiv Independent article did, in the end, explain that. Now, the Dutch, as I mentioned yesterday, have ordered 6 new 155mm Dita self-propelled howitzers from Czechia for the armed forces of Ukraine. So those are self-propelled guns. They look pretty sizable, rather like the Caesar and the Tsutsana, those kind of hefty vehicles. And of course, these are great for shoot and scoot, but actually is shoot and scoot a bit of an obsolete process, and guns of this size are much harder to disguise than towed howitzers that you can put much more easily in a small tree line. So pros and cons, I'm sure. Right, Defence Minister from the Netherlands, so sticking on the Netherlands, has said that they are going to supply Ukraine with spy drones worth €42.6 million, so good stuff there. There's a lot of talk about the French foreign ministers come out and said a bunch of things. One is that the first Mirage 2000s will arrive in Ukraine in early 2025. We'd heard this recently anyway. Just further confirmation. It's good to make sure that this is still the case. So it does sound like repetition, but it's just like, okay, this is confirmation that hopefully will actually happen. Now, I'm going to go through this. This is really interesting from Senator Roger Wicker. Is this a Democrat? I'm not sure. There's been stuff from Turner, who is a Republican, who is very much in support of Ukraine, criticizing Biden. Turner was criticizing Biden over not being told about this North Korean soldiers. And then here we've got Wicker giving a list of what Biden should be doing, things he can put in place. And as Colby Badwar says, this is a good list of actions. It should be done. Senator Roger Wicker, ranking member of the, my goodness, what's that? The SASC GOP. No, maybe it is GOP, actually. It could well be GOP. Right, in the last 90 days of his term, he needs to exercise his responsibilities, says Roger Wicker. He says, I talked to President Biden. So he needs to exercise his responsibilities as commander-in-chief and give Ukraine the weapons it needs to make a substantial difference on the battlefield. I shared my recommendations. Excellent stuff there in this, and we're going to go through it. I just, he is, no, does it say at the end? I really should have worked this out previously. Ranking member, no, it doesn't say where he's senator of and who he's with, but it might well be the GOP. Okay, let's look at the recommendations. 10 recommendations. I'm just going to go through the top lines. Increase the pace of weapons transfers to Ukraine. It's currently rubbish. We need to sort that out. Yes, good news. I agree with that. Which is deliver more vehicles, more ATACMS, and more drones and counter unmanned aerial systems. So that's it delivered stuff more quickly and more of this stuff. Absolutely agree. Recommendation 2, allow greater flexibility on restrictions for US provided munitions. In other words, allow our missiles to be shot deep into Russia. Totally agree. Recommendation 3, increase the cap of US government non-military personnel allowed in the country. Interesting. So there's presently a cap. This is non-military personnel, so you can't have many people operating in Ukraine for security reasons. And in fact, there is a rule about, he says, recommendation 4, establish a regulated presence of US military contractors inside Ukraine. Now, I'm sure there's lots of people secretly operating there, but in terms of operating there in an official capacity, they're not allowed to do it. So Admiral Tony Radakin is a British, he's the head of our kind of help for Ukraine. He often goes and meets in Ukraine with, say, General Syrskyi and whatnot. Now, General Kavoli for the Americans can't do that. So when the Ukrainians want to meet with the Americans, they have to leave Ukraine and go outside because there's regulations on military personnel not being able to go into Ukraine. It's too dangerous, etc., etc. So he's saying this needs to stop because actually it's not very useful. So you should allow a limited number of US military contractors to operate in Ukraine under strict conditions to increase Ukraine's ability to maintain its equipment. So this is actually not the top people, but the people down here. So these are contractors going in to maintain equipment, HIMARS and stuff. So rather than having to put a HIMARS on a transporter and send it all the way back to the US to be fixed, it takes so long. You have contractors working inside Ukraine. Absolutely agree with that. Recommendation 5, expand training for Ukrainian land forces. Totally agree. 6, deliver more shareable commercially derived intelligence. Totally agree. I think intelligence is absolutely key. 7, dramatically expand the Pentagon industrial base policy workforce. So let's look at this one because I don't understand that prima facie. Right, US industrial base expansion and industrial base integration with Europe is not happening fast enough because we lack the personnel to plan and execute these activities. You should direct the Secretary of Defense in the next 15 days to reassign at least 100 capable and motivated DoD civil servants, moving them into these offices and asking Congress for new hiring authorities and supplemental money to pay for this expansion. This short-staffed office that runs the Defense Production Act illustrates the need. Only a handful of people staff that organization, which is tasked with finding ways to rebuild our supplier base for solid rocket motors, missile casings, and more. DoD industrial base offices can also help allies and partners expand their own production, such as the Storm Shadow and Scalp lines in the UK and France, respectively. These US offices include Joint Production Acceleration Cell, blah, 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 blah. Okay, so it's about that public-private sector integration, strategic planning from civil servants to help the industrial base expand and do a better job of fulfilling the needs of the Ukrainians in this case, and actually the American national security objectives. Right, recommendation 8, rapidly accelerate contracting timelines. So things take too long to get sorted. Contracts are not being signed quick enough. We're taking too long to do anything. Speed it up, expedite it. 9, hold monthly high-level defence industrial base meetings. Again, public-private cooperation there. And number 10, deliver more DPICMs. Interesting, that gets its own ones. It's in addition to ATACMs, he says. So 300-kilometre Army tactical missiles. The 300-kilometre ones fired from a single pod from a HIMARS or similar. Okay, we need to give them more of them. And we need to allow them to shoot them deep into Russia, but we also need to give them more DPICMs, which are cluster artillery shells. These are incredibly useful for taking out wide areas, equipment, personnel. We've got a ton of them because we've got either ones that the dud rate is slightly too high, but still going to be useful for those to go to Ukraine. And yes, there are loads of caveats applied to that, but also just in general, kind of phasing them out and whatnot. Ukraine really needs them. So they've arguably got millions of these that can go to Ukraine. So what's he say in terms of the US inventory includes hundreds of thousands of serviceable 155 mil DPICMs rounds. Each 155 round has the effect of 3 to 5 high explosive artillery projectiles. You possess the authority to send Ukraine $250 million worth of these today. There's simply no way to offset the artillery advantage of the Russians without using DPICMs. So you can either wait to build a bunch of artillery ammunition pieces, these shells, produce them, or we've got warehouses full of DPICMs. I can give them all of them. Absolutely agree. I agree with all of that. Brilliant. Colby Badwar goes on to say, this is really interesting. So this then goes back to the discussion of why are we helping Ukraine? We're helping it from a moral point of view. Yep, I agree with that, but that's not really why states act to help Ukraine. You might get some humanitarian assistance from a moral standpoint, but really, if you're going to be spending big money supporting Ukraine's armed forces in defending Ukraine, it's going to be because it's in the whatever country you live in strategic interests, right? This is why I get really frustrated with people saying we shouldn't be giving handouts to Ukraine. We've got our own problems here. They are not handouts. This is exactly what you need to do in order to maintain X, Y, and Z and to achieve X, Y, and Z in terms of your strategic objectives, your geopolitical objectives, hard and soft power around the world, all of this kind of stuff. Right. You've got that, but you've also got an economic motivation to help Ukraine. And this is brilliantly stated here. So the initial comment is from Dave Wasserman, who is senior editor and elections analyst of the nonpartisan Cook Political Report, who said, House rating change. Representative Scott Perry, Republican race versus Janelle Stelson, Democrat, has moved from a lean Republican to a toss-up. In other words, the Republican has got less chance of winning, and it's now 50-50. And the Democrat seems to be doing better than they were. As the ex-Freedom Caucus chair, so Scott Perry, not a fan of Scott Perry, by the way, myself personally, and the Freedom Caucus I despise. I do not like them at all. But anyway, he gets massively outraised by PA10. Okay, so the Cook Political Report saying he's being outraised in funding by Janelle Stelson from the Democrats. So it's looking like they're doing better because of funding. And interesting, this is coming from Colby Badwar, who's a staunch conservative. The point here is pertinent. It's not just about being outraised. Perry has voted against the national security supplemental. So every national security supplemental of aid to Ukraine, he's voted against it. He's a MAGA, Freedom Caucus, Jim Jordan, Matt Gaetz, Marjorie Taylor Greene style person, right? That's who he is. He's voted against all of these supplementals to Ukraine. So actually, most Republicans broadly support aid to Ukraine. So this is the difference between the people on the ground and the MAGA Republicans at the top of the food chain. Most of the MAGA senators, most of the Republican senators broadly support Ukraine, which is why you got the bill passed through bipartisan Congress. A bipartisan bill was passed through Congress, right? Because most senators support that, and slightly less representatives in the House of Representatives support it from the Republicans, because there are more MAGA types there, these 2-year cycles of getting these representatives. Right, I'm not, this is not party political. This is really important to understand this. So Rick Perry is a MAGA representative who is becoming less popular. Now, he's voted against all these supplementals, and once all the funds are obligated, it will end up putting billions into a BAE plant in his district. A big ramp up of Bradley mods and AMPV entered full rate production with those funds. So those funds have already gone and will continue to go into his district. And here's a guy that's voting consistently against those funds coming through. As Bradleys are given to Ukraine, you get new versions of the Bradleys being ordered in. This is what I tell you about. There's no such thing as a free lunch. These appropriations packages, bills, aid packages are effectively a way for the US to improve their own military equipment. It's as simple as that. You improve your own national security under the guise of supporting Ukraine. That voters don't understand that enough is really frustrating. The Biden administration has failed to communicate this adequately enough. But it's interesting where you get people in these particular districts who are voting against such bills, and actually it is money for their districts. And I would hope that people in that district realise that, and that's why he is becoming less and less popular, because he's voting against things that are for the benefit of his own district and his own constituents. Right. Now, interesting here, we've got Buffett. So we've got Warren Buffett is a huge philanthropist, right? He's gajillions of spondoolies he puts towards philanthropic ideas and projects. He's one of the two big private funders of assistance to Ukraine. Now, people on the right-hand side of the political spectrum in America aren't going to like this, because both Buffett and Soros are liberals, supportive of Democrats. But they are also putting tons of money, like literally hundreds of millions of dollars of both Buffett, and I think it's now Howard Buffett, isn't it? His son is in charge of that, and the Soros these foundations are putting hundreds of millions of dollars, not just a bunch, like literally more than some other countries are supporting Ukraine. This is really freaking significant. Now, the Howard Buffett, or the Buffett funded rehab, is rebuilding the lives of Ukrainians war amputees, says the Euromaidan press, as multi-limb loss branded thousands of Ukrainians untreatable. Lviv's Superhuman Center stepped in to tackle the war trauma crisis sweeping the nation. So it's really good that they are getting this assistance. This is going to be a big old article here, but you can go and read it, and that is essentially funded. I don't know if it's completely or partially funded by the Buffetts there, but that's really good news, because we think about weapons, but of course there's so much work that needs to be done to rehabilitate injured soldiers, and that's physically and mentally. So yeah, good stuff. Okay. NATO wants to shoot down Russian drones, says Jürgen Nader. This is the claim, and I talked about this in my last video, from Mark Rutte. This is a statement from Mark Rutte, the General Secretary of NATO now, saying that in view of Russia's war against Ukraine, which led to the violation of the airspace of NATO countries, in particular Romania, I want to say the following. NATO shows its solidarity And we also call on the Romanian authorities to respond effectively to this incident. In other words, he is calling on Romania to shoot down, as a NATO nation, to shoot down a Russian ordnance in NATO airspace. So these drones flying into NATO airspace, shoot them down. One went over last night, went 19 kilometers into Romanian airspace and disappeared from the radar. And there were 2 Romanian F-16s and 2 Spanish F-18s that were scrambled, and then it disappeared from radar. So this could be a really big moment where NATO countries might have already have taken down a Russian drone in NATO airspace. Don't know, but the order's been given. By the sounds of it, it looks like Mark Rutte's given the green light for that. Over 20 Finnish... So, okay, it's a bit all over the place. I should have brought this back to our discussion just before with regard to Scott Perry in the US and money going towards his district from the appropriations bill. Well, here we have over 20 Finnish business projects, have received support under Ukraine's reconstruction plan. So when you are talking about military aid packages going to Ukraine, and when you're talking about humanitarian aid packages and reconstruction packages, these are also not just charitable, humanitarian as much as just the same as military packages are not charity first. They can't, in a sense, of course they are, like, we want to help you rebuild and we want to help demine, etc., etc. But along with that there will be strings attached, like, as in, we're going to help you demine, but we're going to organize this using our own organization, and we're going to use our own mine, we're going to use our own metal detectors or deminers that we're going to research and manufacture here. And so the whole thing becomes still a case of economic stimulus for your own country. So this is very much the case with what Euromaidan Press is saying here. So 20 Finnish business projects have received support under Ukraine's reconstruction plan. Finland's plan for Ukraine's reconstruction includes tools to stimulate private business involvement in key sectors such as construction and energy. And that's how it is. It would be ridiculous for Ukraine to expect all of this help coming from all these other countries, and then the expectation that they would have to sort that all out themselves, whilst also being at war or recovering from war, and also, that they would get the 100% benefit of employing all of their people to do all of that. We'll just take your money and use that to employ all our people to rebuild our country. It's like Finland are going to be saying, we're going to give you $100 million, and with that, we are going to send all these people and this equipment, and we're going to invest in your country in rebuilding it. And there will be a return on investment through the stimulus and maybe through income that comes in later. The worry is always that if Ukraine, it's difficult because either you survive or you don't. But there's going to be the situation to some degree where Ukraine is going to be beholden to outside third-party entities for like the next 100 years. That in some sense there's going to be people extracting stuff from Ukraine as their investment into Ukraine. Do you know what I mean? But you'd much rather have that than A, be destroyed completely, and B, have Russia extracting everything from Ukraine back to the Kremlin. So this is a kind of almost a free market way of getting help, right? Because there's no such thing as a free lunch, right? Okay, South Korea. So moving on to sort of Russian things. South Korea's National Intelligence Service has confirmed that North Korea began sending special forces to Russia on October the 8th. In August, Kim Jong-sik, a high-ranking official in North Korea's Ministry of Military Industry, visited missile launch sites near the Russia-Ukraine front multiple times with North Korean military officers. Between October the 8th and 13th, Around 1,500 North Korean special forces were transported to Vladivostok, Russia, using Russian Navy ships, marking the first time since 1990 that Russian warships entered North Korean waters. According to the NIS, the North Korean soldiers are currently stationed in Vladivostok, Ussurisk, Khabarovsk, and Blagoveshchansk, which I explained yesterday, undergoing training before being deployed to the front lines. These soldiers have received Russian uniforms, weapons, and fake identities to disguise their involvement. Of course, it's Ivan Popov. I am Ivan Popov. Yes, I may look like North Korean, but I am Russian through and through. The reports also notes that since August 2022, North Korea has supplied Russia with over 13,000 containers of weapons, including artillery shells, missiles, and anti-tank rockets. So, just reconfirming what was claimed yesterday, and actually a bit more detail about who went where and at what time. Right, finally, Google, Meta, and TikTok, not finally they've done this, finally this is the final thing I'm going to talk about. Google, Meta, and TikTok have removed social media accounts belonging to Alabuga plant in Russia's Tatarstan region, aimed at recruiting young foreign women to make drones. So I reported ages ago, like literally a year ago, this is a place that makes the Shahid drones for the Russians, the Garan 2 if you like. And this is a site that has co-opted the local like sixth form college or whatever, and is using these like 17-year-old kids to make drones as part of their kind of, you know, their qualifications or whatever. But it's also employing like African women and bringing them over under false pretenses. Videos and other posts on social media platforms promise the young women, who are largely from Africa, a free plane ticket to Russia, a salary of more than $500 a month following their recruitment via the program called Alabuga Start. And it's that program that has been removed from TikTok, Meta, and Google. So that's good news. I presume it won't be removed from Apple, because we've heard today that Apple have removed free media sources that are able to give an alternative to the Russian narrative to Russian populations, such as Radio Free Europe and Radio Liberty and Current TV have been pulled from the Apple Store because Russia asked them to do so, and Apple have done that. On the other hand, Google, Meta, and TikTok appear to be on the right side of morality here. Anyway, thank you for watching. Really appreciate your support. Take care, everybody, and don't forget that the ATP Geopolitics NATO campaign is up and running, and it will be absolutely fabulous. Oh, look, a bit more has been added. It'd be absolutely fabulous if you could help towards that, and we'll do a live on that soon. Take care, guys, and I will speak to you soon.